Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. My name is Gary.
And this is Mike.
And this is Daniel.
All right, guys. First of all, it's great to be here. I'm excited for the conversation we're about to have. So, we're responding to a listener's email, and this email is coming to us from somebody calling themselves JT. All right, JT, we're going to jump into this email, and it says, "Hello, 12th Step Podcast team. I've been in recovery for a little over a year now, and I've been listening to your podcast for the past 3 months. First, thank you for the work that you do. It's been both encouraging and thought-provoking for me as I navigate this journey. I want to share a little bit about my background and ask you for your insight. I've been participating in recovery plan, attending 12-step meetings and working with my sponsor. I'm also neurodivergent, and for the most part, for the most of my life, building and maintaining relationships has been a challenge. Because of that, certain aspects of the traditional 12-step model don't resonate with me the way that they might with others. To be honest, I'm not a fan of the 12 steps or what they ask of me. My spouse, therapist, and sponsor all see the value in the program and are encouraging or even pressuring me to stay with it, work the steps. Even though I don't personally see how they help, I understand their concerns and motivations, and I'm trying to be open-minded, but I find myself wondering, how can I do recovery my way, in a way that feels authentic and sustainable to me? My sponsor wants me to check in weekly and continue working the steps until I hit certain milestones. I struggle with that because it feels rigid and not personalized to who I am or how I best grow. I want to honor the process, and I want to honor myself, my instincts, my awareness, my understanding of what works for me. So I guess my question is this: is it okay to approach recovery on my own terms? And if so, how do I balance that with the guidance and expectations of others who believe strongly in the 12-step model? I would love to hear your thoughts, either on the podcast or in a response to this email. Thanks again for your honesty and heart you bring to this space. Warmly, JT." Well, JT, that is a lot to unwrap, and I myself have a lot of different thoughts. Boy, emails like this always make me wish like we were talking to the person in person, because I have so many clarifying questions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I certainly understand what you mean. It's hard because some things are vague, there's a little bit more information on there where we kind of want to dig into it deeper to understand better.
So, neurodivergence. Any one of you guys have some insight on that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, here, let me pull it up. So what that means. So I just looked this up on the internet. Neurodivergent refers to people who process information in a way that is not typical for their age. This variation could include a diagnosed condition like autism or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, but neurodivergence in itself is not a diagnosis. ASD, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, all of those are considered under that neurodivergent umbrella, and there's probably a lot more that I don't have listed here.
Okay, well, So keeping that in mind, and not knowing exactly the nature or details of what you're experiencing, um, we're gonna try to tackle this in a way with the best information that we have. I do think we have a disclaimer saying we're not professionals, so
Yes.
just remember you're getting what you pay for.
We are addicts
But
in
Yeah,
recovery.
So
I think the other piece of it is that we're talking about a diagnosis that we don't. I know nothing about. I don't have experience with it. I don't have anyone that I really know well, and what those symptoms might include. So, if I come across as insensitive, I apologize immediately, simply because it's just stuff I don't know about.
Well, having said that, and understanding that we're going to approach this with the very best that we have, there are a couple of things that the first thing that jumps out to me is anybody that I've ever helped who wants to do it their way. Now, okay, I will voice my concern first, and then I have a couple of ideas that I want to throw out. Something that was in my recovery that helped a lot was, I was told if I could have found a way to solve the problem on my own, I would have. And I didn't.
Yeah.
And I tried everything I could think of that I tried. Okay. There was even a year and a half time before my suicide attempt where I genuinely and tried some recovery stuff, and my brain started to get an idea of what was going on, but I wanted to do it my way, on my terms, and it failed spectacularly. So I'm always a little hesitant when people say that they want to do things on their terms or their way, because you can't use the thinking that got you into the problem to get yourself out of the problem, and your best thinking has put you where you're at. So that's something to consider very seriously as you navigate your recovery. Now, having said that, and Daniel, Mike, either one of you want to jump in on that point before I move on?
Yeah, I'll pop in on that. I think that's a great point. I think we've heard that literally our entire recovering lives, and it's relevant. It simply is relevant. That all the sort of there's some provisional beliefs associated with that as well, right? The idea that at the point that I decided to start my recovery path, I needed to recognize the fact that I was broken. I had done some damage to myself, to my brain. And it's going to take some time to resolve some of that. So I needed to rely on some outside information, people around me that loved me and that cared about me. And those provisional beliefs, because they saw the world clear, they loved me in a way that they were going to take care of me. So I needed to believe that. And if I'm operating in the sort of the mindset and system that I can get myself out of this with my own thinking, then that's a flawed belief. That's just not going to happen. So I think that's the whole gist of the point right there is that we need to make certain that we're not relying on our old self to walk through this path.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Exactly.
I agree with that because, I tried several different groups and programs, but I always kept it like, no, I'm going to do it my way. Even though I'm taking the information and I'm still going to do it my way. And it didn't work. It never worked. And like you said, our common counselor has that saying, like, your best thinking got you here. And that was the truth. And so it wasn't until I finally let go and followed what the program prescribed. If you go, it's no different than if you go to the doctor and you're sick or ill or you have an injury and the doctor prescribes certain things to happen. You need to take this pill at this time, and you need to do this physical therapy, and so you're going to do it. It baffles me how many addicts will buck against that and say, oh, no, I'm not going to do that, even though that's what the doctor in this case is prescribing. these are the steps you need to do. These are the things these are, we've talked about it, these are kind of the things that you need to do in recovery to find that. You listen to your sponsor. They know they've walked this path before. They know what you need to do. If you need to check in, and so forth. It's amazing how we want to buck against that, but we'll go into a doctor and they'll say, "Oh, take this, do this, and this," and we'll do it.
I'm going to read something into this, if you're okay.
Sure.
One of the things I'm sensing from this more than anything is the reluctance to experience a relationship with a sponsor or other people. I mean, the idea of checking in with the sponsor every week is problematic for him, and I get the sense that that's really sort of the crux of what the problem is that it's forcing him to interact with other people in a way that he's uncomfortable with. That's sort of maybe I'm reading something in that, so if I'm way wrong on that, please don't own that, JT. But that's the sense I get is that so much about this, the step work and everything else is in reaching out to other people when you're struggling and reaching out to a sponsor and all that sort of stuff on a regular basis. It's the structure of that in relationships that's forcing some consternation. And I get that. I get that. Relationships is not a thing for everybody. I happen to be a relationship person, so I don't necessarily understand it all that well. But the point being is that it's not necessarily for everybody. I see a lot of people who experience a lot of anxiety as a result of having to communicate with other people in some way. And so maybe there are ways around that. I don't know. But the point being is that we do need somebody in our life to be responsible to. And we need to be able to figure out a way to navigate that in a way that fits you and your circumstance and the way you feel comfortable, and yet still meet the objective, if that makes sense. And maybe there's some alternatives to that. I don't know, but thankfully for me, I didn't have a sponsor that was rigid on a weekly call, and we got to spend an hour and a half together to talk through this or whatever. That was not my experience with you, Gary, and I appreciated that. But maybe this sponsor is seeing that as though this is the way I work, this is what I do. But remember, JT, that this is in the sponsorship program that you selected him to be your sponsor. And so, maybe you needed to explain to him at that moment when you decided you wanted him to be your sponsor that, look, this is how I operate. This is what's comfortable for me, and this is what's not comfortable for me. And that the two of you could come together in some meaningful way in that regard. But clearly, what I'm reading in the message more than anything is that you're uncomfortable with the regular communication, because that's what the program feels like it's an awful lot about. And that there is some flexibility in that side of it, I guess, is my point.
Yeah,
I agree, and something that I would like to bring up is very much in the vein of what Mike was saying. You've obviously reached a point in your life, because you talk a little bit about he mentions his spouse, right?
Yeah.
Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, it's down there. It says my spouse, therapist, and sponsor all see value in the program. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason I bring that up is obviously you've reached a point in your life where you're married and you have sponsors and things like that. So whatever your divergence is, whatever struggles that you've had, you've obviously made it through high school, and there's probably been some secondary education or some professional stuff, and you've developed skills that have helped you navigate those. So I would look at the skills that you've developed in working with your challenges and see if those can be applied in working through this as well, because I'm sure that there's something there that's useful. Also, keep in mind that your sponsor and your spouse and your therapist, these people want you to succeed. They have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
I know that the 12-step program works, and I've seen a lot of people work through it and they all do it a little bit differently. The nice thing about a correct principle, and I believe that the 12-step program teaches correct principles. The nice thing about a correct principle is that it can be applied in many ways. Now, you still have to be determined and faithful to what the principle is teaching or trying to accomplish. But I think Mike is right when he says there's some latitude on how you can get there. And I also think there's some wisdom in really sitting down and thinking about what the whys are behind why you're resistant. I think Mike is right. I think it has more to do with what the 12 steps are asking you to do more than what they are themselves. So I think that would be something to consider very carefully as you go forward.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is also, have you had a conversation with your sponsor about this? Your neurodivergence. Have you had a conversation like, I'm not really comfortable checking in every week? Can I, we don't know if it's a text message every week, if it's a phone call. There's a little bit of vagueness there, but maybe it's, hey, can we have a phone call every other week? And the week in between, it's just it's a text message, me just throwing something out to you saying, hey, things are going well. Unless things turn into a firestorm, then I'll reach out. There is, like Gary and Mike have said, there's some latitude, but we don't, as a sponsor, the sponsor doesn't know that until you've actually talked to them and then had a heart-to-heart conversation on how you want to do this. There's definitely still some things you have to follow through with. You can't decide, I'm going to do step 1, then I'll jump to step 4, and then I'm going to do step 8. There is a progression there. But definitely open up and talk to your sponsor and see if there is some latitude, if there is some way. And if that doesn't feel right after having that conversation, there's nothing wrong with looking to see if there's another sponsor that maybe fits better.
Something else that I would go ahead, Mike, and then I'll make a point.
One of the things I've discovered with those that I've had an opportunity to sponsor, and then even in my own experience, those moments of resistance can be a tremendous amount of information for you as well. And I don't know how that is for you, Gary, or for you, Daniel, but for me, that the items that I tended to resist were inflection points. They were those moments in time when I realized that my recovery had stalled until I addressed this particular issue. The thing I'm trying to bring up here more than anything is that the things that you're struggling with and are afraid of, in terms of the connection with a sponsor or others who are trying to express the value of and I think you used the word of pressuring you. In some cases, may literally be, it'd be interesting for you to spend some time and actually see how they relate to your addiction. I often found that the things that I stressed and fought about and fought over the very, very most, even through recovery, were in a lot of cases things that I didn't want to address in my own personal life, and that were very much connected to my addictive behavior. And so it'd be wise for you to spend just a second with that and see where that's at.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. The thing that I wanted to point out is that we've talked about this in previous episodes of the podcast about the difference between rules and principles, and the 12-step is, you're trying to apply these principles in your life, and so there's a little bit of latitude. But the thing that I want to caution you against, or the point that I want to make, is it only works if you're committed to having them work. Because you can if you're committed to wanting to the principles of the 12-step program to work in your life, and you're looking for a way to apply those principles that's going to allow for the other challenges in your life, that's fantastic. If you're going to use the other challenges in your life to excuse yourself or make excuses for, or say that doesn't apply to me, then it's not going to work at all. Did I articulate that correctly, guys?
I think so.
I think so.
I do believe so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's a lot here. There is a lot here that it feels like we only know, a piece of the story. We've all worked with people who are resistant to the process. Now, I don't know that I don't read that into the message here that JT is trying to convey, is that I'm resistant to the process. It's just resistant to because it doesn't fit his specific. It doesn't fit his specific way in which he feels like he progresses, and I think that's relevant. I think that's relevant for all of us. So there is some latitude in all of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no value in the steps, or there's no value in a sponsor, or there's no value in a variety of these things that come up. These are really, really relevant. I mean, the steps have 100 years of success, and this is sort of the main. If one really wants to overcome addictive behavior, and what's fascinating about that is now, even in today's environment, we're learning that addictive behavior in anything, it may be an eating issue, it may be a hoarding issue, it may be a variety of other things, but any addictive behavior that we involve, it's the basis of recovery, is all 12-step stuff, all associated with AA. So there's no doubt about it. This stuff works. And I think coming to that realization and surrendering to that process is a big deal. That's critical.
Anybody, you guys have any other thoughts?
Just one. Good luck.
Yeah.
Recovery is it's the most painful yet joyful, miserable yet personal and happy, and it's really hard to imagine your life being any better than it is right now. Recovery is everything to me. It's literally everything to me. And so when I say good luck, I mean that literally. Good luck, because what a golden opportunity it is to make changes in your life that are meaningful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, I was just reminded of something my sponsee actually just sent me yesterday. Let's see. It's just here. I was pulling up. I apologize. The remark, he showed me a passage, and there's a passage that says, we often fail to appreciate the miracle of recovery in our individual lives. And he just reached out and said, thank you for being a part of that miracle every day. Even if this sponsee isn't the right fit, you will find one that, or not sponsee, sponsor. Even if the sponsor isn't the right fit, you will find a sponsor that is, and you'll find that miracle will come into your life. But we have to let it, and we have to find a way that, you're right, we do have to find a way that works for us, but as Mike has said, sometimes when we hit resistance, that's us. It's not that's us refusing to take that step forward. That's us refusing to change what we have been doing, which hasn't been working. And so going to meetings, calling your sponsor, or reaching out to them, even though sometimes it feels like, wow, that's cumbersome, it's an annoyance or whatever, you'll find that after time, at least I did, that was one of the greatest gifts I had. I never reached, in my early days of my addiction, I never reached out to anyone. And then this time I got into this program, I started reaching out, and I found that they were life-saving. That it was more than just, oh my gosh, I screwed up. It was, I'm connecting to someone. I'm letting out this hidden burden that I've kept all my life. And it's no longer that, because I know other people struggle with it. And I'm not, whatever this negative thing is I'm viewing in my head or calling myself or other people are saying about me, I'm just a normal person struggling with this issue. And there is hope. There is a way to overcome this. There is a way that I can be better. And so that was a huge help for me in changing the negative mindset that I had in myself. And maybe that will help. There's nothing wrong with giving it a shot and seeing if it works. But definitely, I would say talk to your sponsor. Let him know what you're struggling with so you guys can come up with a solution that works for both of you.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice.
Well, fantastic conversation, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, JT, we wish you the very, very best of luck, and we would love to hear back from you again and hear how things are going. And yeah. Okay, I have one other thought.
Go for it.
You've already learned some things that work for you because you've navigated through life. Okay, some tools that help you navigate social situations or new material or whatever it is. Okay, spend some time with it, think about it, distill what those things are, and then talk with your sponsor and your spouse and your therapist on. I've found that approaching new material, this has worked for me. How can we apply this? Okay, if you found tools that work for you, then find ways that you can use those tools to apply the principles of the 12-step program. And I think you'll find the success that you're looking for. Anyway, that's my last thought. Unless you guys have something else, we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
I'm good.
I do not. I think it's been a fun conversation to think about. I would be curious for JT to lay out for himself what he thinks will actually work, and then maybe take it to his sponsor and say, "Will this work?" And how does that fit within the 12-step model, right? That would be fascinating to kind of compare and contrast as well, to say, well, that's not really a 12-step program by somebody helping you out in that way or whatever, but it'd be fascinating to see how that panned out as well. But yeah, as far as advice goes, I think, he's just going to have to work within the confines of the people who are there and how they can help each other, because this is some sort of it is a pay it forward program. It is a stewardship responsibility. There's all kinds of stuff associated with that make it successful, And outside of those confines, we just have found that it's not successful. It just isn't.
Right. All right.
So,
well, with that, best of luck, JT. Let us know how it goes. This is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
This is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.